Well, hello again, folks, and welcome to my Busey coffee break. And today we're going to talk about something you may not be even aware that you have. And what that is an oil tank buried in the ground from back in the 1900s right through the 1970s, say, for example, when the oil truck would come by, fill up your tank for fuel for the cold winter months ahead to service your furnace. And with me today, I've got Randy Shaw, and he's a tank detection specialist. How you doing, Randy?
Hi, good.
Good. You know,
Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. It's one thing about this show, we like to bring people that are specialists in their field. And being that you're involved in detecting oil tanks, first of all, let's open up by asking you, what's so concerning about oil tanks in the ground?
Well, Shell, the biggest thing with an oil tank in the ground is that it might leak. And environmentally now, you have to remove the tank when you sell your property.
Now, when you say you have to, is that everywhere, or is that just some cities?
It's a provincial mandate from the Ministry of the Environment.
So matter where you are, there is a mandate to get rid of.
Anywhere there's a buried oil tank, if the property's sold, it has to be removed.
So that's kind of the point of concern, is when the home is going to be sold. Otherwise, there's no reason to be concerned about it in the ground other than the age of it, and it could be leaking.
Well, the longer it's in the ground, the worse the leak will be, so it's not going to get any better.
Right.
And if you've got the means to remove it, the sooner you do it, the better it ought.
And the means being the money.
The money.
Because
exactly.
really, it comes right down to the point, folks, that when you have an oil tank removed, depending on how many years it's been in there, if there's any leachage in the groundwater or in the soils around a tank that's leaking, it could cost thousands of dollars to remove it. But some people, they may not want to go there because they're not planning on moving anywhere. But when it comes to moving or selling, or even in the estate selling, it has to be identified and put onto a disclosure form that it is there or it's not there.
That's correct.
Now, what do you give me as a homeowner in the event if you come out, I call you, for example, let's use myself as an example. Don't have an oil tank, but let's use a scenario here. That the home that I have available, for example, is say in 50s, and somewhere there is an oil tank, unless it's been removed before we moved in. But I would be surprised because I had it left to me, say, by the family. So therefore, you always knew there was oil, but where did it come from? What do you do first when you get that call? What do you say to me?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I would make an appointment to come and view the house.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first get to the house, I ask to see the furnace room.
Mm-hmm.
So I go down there, and if it's got the original concrete floor or dirt floor, looking around the furnace area, there'll be a gas furnace naturally now, but
not necessarily. I
but
still see oil.
There still are, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would look to see if there's any evidence of the oil lines, either on the wall, coming through the wall, or in the ground near where the new furnace is.
And being the odor of that oil, you'd like to smell it.
Sometimes you would, if it's a dirt floor, but if it's concrete, a lot of times it's painted over. So
right. Now, what's that cost me?
We don't charge to do the scan for a homeowner.
Right. So therefore, you're going to come out to the house. You're going to give me the full details. You're going to explain to me what you're going to do. There's not going to be any cost to identify there is or there isn't an oil tank in the ground. If there isn't, I guess it's goodbye, Charlie, and in your case here, goodbye, Randy, and everything's over, said and done. But what if there is a tank?
Well, if there is a tank, then I'll find out how the size of it, the location, and I'll give you a quote on removing it.
Right. So therefore, that all runs and follow and suit. But say, for example, I don't want to have it removed at that particular time. For example, okay, fine, I've got a tank. Are you going to give me something that I obviously don't want to have you come out for nothing, but you must give me something that I can give to the realtor, because let's say it's an estate being sold here, that here, Mr. Realtor, there is an oil tank down in there.
Well, I would give you the quote from my company saying that what the cost is to remove it.
Okay, now is that...
And then you could pass that on to
the realtor.
Buyers or the realtors, right?
Now, the homeowner then, that's the seller, let's call that person the seller. What happens when they have the quote? Do they give that to the realtor and say, I don't want to have anything to do with taking that tank out, we'll leave that up to the person that's going to end up buying? Can I sell that home with a quote identifying there is a tank, or do I have to remove it before I give it to the realtor?
Well, I know and people have sold their homes and they've gotten the buyers to take the responsibility of removing the tank, but most buyers will ask that the seller remove the tank, and their realtor will insist on that in the deal.
And that's the way that we like to handle it through our services here of the Shell Busey House Smart Home Services. And that's what the company Speedy Solution is all about, and you work for Speedy Solution. So therefore, you're doing everything according to the rules of the province.
Exactly, yeah.
But what you're implying that there's some of that may not be being followed through with, whereas the home is being sold and being bought, and from that point the tank removal could, goodness knows, whatever happens there.
Yeah, well, if you don't take the tank out, then there's a reason for that, and money would have to change hands. And I can't see most buyers agreeing to that, because you don't know what the cost will actually be until the tank's out of the ground.
Well, that's what I was indicating there. If you give me a quote as the seller or the owner of the home and selling the home, how accurate can that quote be? Because you haven't got down into the ground yet to give any environmental testing.
Well, our quote will include the removing the tank and the environmental testing, but it won't include any remediation that has to be done, and we won't know anything about that until the soil samples come back from the lab.
So this is what I'm really getting at. It's really to the best interest of the buyer to make sure that the information that's being received from the homeowner that's selling, that everything is above board. And this is very important, folks, that you want to make sure, is there a tank? Yes, there is. What is the quote to remove the tank? This is what the quote is, because I have it as a slip of certification that there is a tank, and here's what it's going to cost to remove it. But that certificate doesn't give the cost of any remedial work in the event if there is any leaches in the ground.
No, it doesn't.
So therefore, if I was a buyer on the disclosure or subject to purchasing that, I would say, I want the tank out of there.
Exactly.
So that's the point that we're really making here, is that if you're buying a home that is in that area of 1950 or 1900s, I guess, right through to 1970, in that area where oil was very popular, that to have a company like Speedy Solutions have that tank removed before such time as it's ever sold, that way there's no question of any concern for the buyer.
That's correct. And then once the tank's out, you'll have a report from the environmental company showing exactly what they found and all the tests that were done and what was done to remediate the soil if there was in fact a leakage, and then go from there.
Well, that's really important, because when it comes to selling something and the buyer buying something, you want to know that everything is going to be clear and certified. And I know some of the fire departments in Greater Vancouver, for an example, are making efforts of finding out where these oil tanks are from old records that are on file. And I know some cities have got more information than others, and that's so be it. But always check with the fire department. I don't see any reason why not.
Some of the fire departments do have records, yes.
Yeah. It's the same as drainage, because a lot of the companies that are in the drainage business know where all the sumps are as well. But let's take it right from get-go, seeing that we've got you here and you're a specialist in your field. Tell us what happens when you find the customer has agreed to have you facilitate and finding out just where that tank, if there is a tank. What do you do now that you have been introduced to the homeowner, and where do you go from there? You go down to the basement, you take a check down there. What do you do outside?
So then when I go outside, I use a magnometer metal detector, and I'll scan the property, and I usually concentrate closer to the house, within 10 feet. Tanks are often in the corners, and most of the cases they're in their backyard, especially if the house has a lane.
Right.
So
For servicing with
for
the truck that
servicing,
when
yeah.
the oil was being
Because
delivered.
then the truck could go down the lane and fill everybody's thing up, and rather than
But is there anything
Block the
that
street.
Joe homeowner out there right now can go out to the backyard or down into the basement and look to see if there are indications of a tank?
well, they can see quite often the breather pipes up against the wall of the house, and it's just inch and a half steel pipe, and it usually 6 feet up, and that was where when the oil was filled, the air escaped from the tank by going up that pipe. And sometimes there's oil caps for the filler still in the lawn, but
Those are the ones that normally sat up proud of the ground.
in most cases those are gone now because they haven't been used since
You can't go over them with a
70s,
lawnmower either.
and then, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they cut them off, and so
Yeah.
when I use my magnometer, I try and find that pipe
Hmm.
and find that pipe first, dig down, discover where that pipe is. If it's still open and I have access, I'll put a stick down there to see how deep it is,
Dip it.
dip it, measure how much fluid's still in there if there is any.
That could be groundwater, it could be oil.
It could
If
be,
there was a leak,
most of the cases it's mixed.
yeah,
It's oily water
that's
because the
being.
tanks can condensate on the inside,
Mhm.
and they can leak from the groundwater coming in.
Right.
Depends on the conditions. That a lot of properties are filled with water.
Right.
Depends on where.
There's a lot of
where it
groundwater
is.
in the
Yeah,
area.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there may be some homeowners out there that are aware there is an oil tank down there, but they were, if they had their wishes, it wouldn't be there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So once you've identified that there is a tank, and now they, to confirm that, you're going to give them a letter which is going to obviously cost for your time, charge for your time and efforts out there. From that particular point, you put a quote together for them, and from that particular, I guess, level of knowledge, they give that to the realtor if they're going to sell.
That's right.
And then from that point, everything is up and disclosed, and the home buyer, the potential home buyer, is aware it's either gone, and here's the certificate that it's gone, and this is what was the finding, or it's still in the ground, and the realtor is going to obviously maybe have a subject that the oil tank must be removed before the buyer buys.
Hmm.
So that really kind of tells the whole story, folks, that oil tanks are not a good thing. And they are not a good thing for the environment in the ground. And I've been in basements when homeowners have called me out about other things, and I'll say, you got an oil tank in the ground around here somewhere because I can smell it. And it'd be coming up through the dirt crawl space.
Ooh.
So that's identifying a concern for removal. But when it comes right down to disclosures, identification, buying a home, oil tanks in the ground, letters of identifying that sort of situation, that's where you come in as your specialty.
That's correct.
And that device that you have called the magnometer,
Yes.
so really I guess the magnet is a magnet, identifies where the metal is in the tank. Thank the good Lord there was no plastic tanks in those days.
Yeah, it would be very difficult if the tanks had been plastic.
Right. But one thing about plastic, it does last, but in the ground. But on the other hand, who knows with all the minerals and different things that are going to affect that of plastics as well, or vinyls or acrylics and all the rest of it. Anything else that you can think of that would be interesting for the homeowner that may have or may not have a tank?
Well, a lot of times my job when I go to the home is the people are very fearful, especially older people, and some of these people that own these older homes have owned those homes for 30, 40 years.
Mhm.
They're very fearful about the money that they've got invested in the house, and now that they know they have a tank, they know they have to get it out, so it's just a matter that they've got to say, when am I going to do it? You can wait till you sell the home,
Right,
because then you'll have the monies
right.
to remove the tank, or maybe you have the money, but often they don't want to spend that money.
Well, I think what we want to present in this particular coffee break is that, folks, if you're aware that you have a tank, then deal with it. If you don't know if there is a tank or not, then for goodness sakes, have it looked into to identify if there is or there isn't. From that particular point, it's going to be your call as to spending the money to have it removed in the event if there is a requirement to remove it right away or down the road or whatever the case may be. But in order to sell it, as you say, the provincial laws of the land, the rules are to get it out of there before you can sell it.
Yeah, the tank has to be removed when the property changes hands.
It's just that easy. When in doubt, don't pout. Let Shell help you out. And that's what it comes down to, using the home services. And Randy Shaw works for Speedy Solutions, which are oil tank removing services. And it goes without saying, when you have something that has to be done, there's going to be a lot of people in the business. And some people do it according to the rules and regs and bylaws, but there may be some out there that don't. And that's where it's very important to deal with a company that you can have assurance of that's going to be taken care of properly.
Yeah, that's correct, Shell. We have full liability insurance, workers' compensation. We've been in this business for many years, and we have a good crew, and the same people have been with us for many years. So
Well,
we
and you
find
know,
that that's the way to do business.
and it goes without saying, Randy, if you didn't have it, you wouldn't be here.
That's right.
So all that is a criteria that we check. Our contracts. A lot of people say, how do you get contractors? Shell? We put them through a criteria. It takes about 3 weeks to even become a member of my home service referral because we do all the checks. We take the fear out before you go on to the service field. So Randy, thank you very much for coming out and giving us the rundown. And that magnometer sounds very interesting, but I certainly can see how it would work very fine. But folks, give us a call. Right here at the Housemart Home Services. Numbers on your screen, websites on the screen, and also the information on Speedy Solutions is on the screen as well. So it's just that easy. Until next coffee break, have a great one. Love you all. Bye-bye for now.